Excellent. All right. Well, we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, guys, and everybody on the recording. My name is Brad. I'm a digital video production teacher at Toho Pikalaiga High School down in Central Florida. I've been teaching specifically digital video production for, gosh, 6 or 7 years on and off, which, not as much time as a lot of people have been teaching, of course, but specifically digital videos, the only topic I've ever taught. Professionally, like Hannah mentioned, before we did the breakout sessions, I've been kind of here, there, and everywhere. I've traveled the country. I've traveled around different places, doing a lot of different jobs, and for a lot of different clients, doing a lot of different things. So it's, I think just in that, really, when it comes to the students and teaching, it's really useful for me because it really gives the kids that extra bit of perspective, because I'm sure some of you guys probably understand, or at least the two people on the call, that everybody at first wants to be a filmmaker, right? They have the dream of going out to Hollywood and being that director, or a DP in Hollywood, right? But I come from more of like the videography space. So being in the videography space, it kind of gives me a different perspective. It kind of helps me sort of inform the students that there's other ways of making money through this craft that doesn't involve you just trying to go to film school and being a filmmaker and doing all these things, which is great. I mean, that is some people's that's some people's prerogative, and that's what they want to do. That's their dream, and that's fantastic and everything. But not everybody can do that, right? And there's so many avenues when it comes to video production. The world is really revolving around video these days, especially when with the whole thing with Instagram Reels and all that, and TikTok, of course, especially with the young people. TikTok. I don't know anything about TikTok, but they love friggin' TikTok, and so it's all about TikTok, and everything's all about video, right? So this subject is getting more and more and more important over the years. So yeah, I think probably, if you're a new teacher or you've been doing this a while, if you're a new teacher, I think from the beginning, it's important just to offer your perspective on the whole thing and really be super clear as to what you can offer the kids in terms of, when they leave high school, how can they make a career out of this? How can they make some money doing this? And that's really what's most important, is that we can make a living from it. So anyway, today I really want to just kind of go over some of my past experiences with teaching, some things that teaching video production, some things that might help newer teachers and possibly some more experienced teachers, some new ideas. Hopefully give you some new ideas. I'm going to go and show everybody my Canvas as well, in the way that I've organized my Canvas. Canvas has just been such an amazing resource for me, and I kind of wanted to break down my modules very briefly. Or I say not all of them, but at least the majority of them, just to kind of show at least how far I've gotten and how that's really helping me in my teaching. And I kind of wanted to show as well some new things that we're doing literally starting this week. Like we're going crazy right now on my program, really busting out some new content. And I kind of wanted to show a little bit of that and how that's kind of how we're sort of presenting all of that. I want to go over a little bit about grading, some grading practices that might be useful for people, and kind of the way that I sort of structure grading a little bit. I have different tiers of my course as well. I wanted to touch a little bit on that and how they kind of differentiate from each other, because just knowing that's kind of tough, organizing your tiers, levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and what's the difference between those, and then talk a little bit about testing, of course, obviously certification testing, what we kind of do to kind of prepare for certification testing, and all that stuff. So, I want to talk a little bit about Canvas, right? Like I said, I've been teaching for, a good few years. I actually started teaching when I was around, gosh, I think I was 22 years old when I started teaching. I'm 30 now. So it was a little while ago. But way back when, nobody had ever heard of Canvas. So we were kind of doing everything still on paper and everything, of course, which a lot of people obviously still are. But specifically these last couple of years, at least our school district and Osceola School District in Central Florida has really been pushing Canvas as a tool. Now, of course, everybody on the call and everybody listening after the fact, you guys might have some slightly different systems involved with your school system, with your school district. Everybody's different, but so I can really only attest to my experience. But by using a tool like Canvas, an organizational tool, if you have something like what I'm about to show you, that's going to really, really help things and really help organize and kind of split up lessons into nice, easy to digest chunks. So let me share my screen a little bit and sort of share the way that I've kind of put things together. So let me do that. Desktop and share. Oh, apparently I'm supposed to go into my preferences real quick. Screen recording. Technical difficulties, people. Sorry about that. I'm having some my thing's telling me I'm trying to share my screen and it's going, no, you can't do that.
Let me see if I can change it so that you can share.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think I just made it. Go ahead and try again, Brad.
Yeah, it's all good. My it's oh, you guys have Canvas. Oh, fantastic. Firewalls off. It's actually on my Mac telling me it's my Zoom system preferences, it looks like. So let me see. Open system security and privacy. Sorry about this, guys. Security and privacy, firewalls, system preferences, Zoom. Click the lock. Ah, okay. I think I got it now. I'm sorry about that, guys. All right, I'm getting this closer and closer. So one or two people, I just noticed somebody on the chat saying that until the screen, close a quiz Zoom or do it on your own late. Okay, cool. So we'll do that. All right, I'm hoping I can do this now. Aha! Okay, oh, thank God. Sorry about that. I had to like go into my system preferences and do that whole thing. Anyway, so we're here. I noticed somebody on the chat that just now mentioned that they've got Canvas and it is amazing. It is amazing. Canvas is a really, really amazing tool. And I just kind of wanted to show briefly sort of the way that I've organized my modules in Canvas from start to finish. So my courses, I've got 4 different courses right here on the left. If you're using Canvas, you can know kind of how tricky it is to really get into it. I cross-listed my courses, which is really cool. So if you have, say, 3 classes that are level 1s, you can actually cross-list them together. So you just have one course. And when you make changes to that one course, it does for all of your classes. So it's a super cool feature. If you didn't know you could do that, I only found that out a few weeks ago, and it's made a huge difference to me. It's saved me tons of time. So anyway, but I've got 4 courses. I kind of organized them 1, 2, 3, 4. My level 1s is where the majority of the main lessons are going to be, because my level 1s is really when I get into the meat and potatoes of, you know, how to edit, how to come up with all these systems, how to cut things in a timeline, you know, and some basic kind of technological things to do with that. When it comes to video production in general, one thing that I like to tell my students is like, you know, video production is kind of a perfect blend of being really technologically, you know, sound and having a lot of technological prowess, as well as having that sort of creative mind, kind of like in the theater, right, as thespians, right? It's kind of a perfect blend of those two. So we really need to have some technical knowledge. So during the first year, I kind of teach all those lessons and I really get them going with all of that, as well as obviously composition and all those other things. So at the beginning, you know, we have a pre-test, of course. I don't know if you guys, you know, on the call do pre-test with us. We have to do a pre-test where we take a test at the beginning of the year, take a test at the end of the year. Mine's 35 questions. And for my pre-test, I typically go over a lot of editing stuff, but some general just video production concepts, of course, like what is the rule of thirds? What's the 180-degree rule, right? You know, what's a video file type? Multiple choice, you know, is it MOV, MP4, you know, PNG, blah, 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 right? So at the beginning, if you do the pre-test, in theory, all the kids will fail it, and then at the end of the year, they'll pass it. So mine's about 35 questions. I make it all multiple choice and put it in Canvas as well. So Canvas grades everything for me. And us as teachers, we need all the time we can get, right? So if Canvas is going to grade multiple choice things for us, awesome. I'm going to let Canvas do that. So yeah, I got my pre-test, of course. Start with course basics. You know, I kind of go over, you know, what exactly digital video technology, what's entailed with the course. Of course, we all do this on the first day of the year. The very first assignment I give them is actually job roles in the industry. So what I basically get them to do is I just get them to write a paragraph about job roles. It's kind of like a first sort of couple of days assignment, you know, just kind of get them going and really just get them used to using Canvas, right? Because I focus so much on Canvas. I really need the kids to learn how to do it. After that, we jump straight into Premiere Pro basics. I've created a whole module just to do with the basics of Premiere Pro. And when I say basics, I mean like, how is everything laid out in the timeline? And if you're in your school district or your video production program, you guys use a different editing software, say it's like Sony Vegas or Final Cut Pro or whatever it is you use, you know, obviously all this still applies. You know, we use Premiere, we're in Adobe, we have a big focus on Adobe, of course. Oh, and this is an Adobe program on the call, of course, so obviously everybody should be using Premiere in theory. But if you're using Premiere, you know, I just kind of go over program monitor, you know, source monitor, timeline, all that kind of stuff, what all those things mean, what's the difference between all of those things, you know, starting a project, best practices. And each one of these pages, you know, is not even anything crazy, right? We're not, you know, we're not moving mountains here. It's literally just having some really basic information on there as to why should I get certified, you know, things like that. because this is really just to get our feet wet with the kids. And we can kind of briefly go over this if you like. Honestly, I kind of went over it as a class. I get my smart board at the front of the room, and I kind of do it with them, of course. I'm sure you guys do as well. But this is and the beauty about Canvas is this is a reference document for them, right? If they come in and they're like, well, I don't remember how to do this thing, now I can just go to Canvas. Like, I'm not going to explain it to you 50 million times, because you know what these people are like, right? Kids and teenagers, they'll just keep asking you the same questions over and over and over again, despite how many times you've taught them. So anyway, so Premiere Pro Basics, I kind of go over this whole thing. I do page by page, just all the little different kind of elements. Like I said, it's basics. There's so much we can go into Premiere, right? But at the beginning, we just want to make it really basic, because if we start bombarding them with too much, I'm sure you guys have found out, they're not going to retain any of that information. So the very, very, very first assignment that I do, though, it's called favorite foods. Okay. Now, everybody, obviously favorite foods is something we can all relate to, right? We all eat. So favorite foods is always a fun one to do, because it encourages them, obviously, to pick out their favorite foods. It's something that they can relate to, and they can find some fun shots to edit with. We're not asking them to film anything. We're not asking them to do any crazy effects or anything like that. It's really just downloading things from the internet, clips, and organizing them in the time inside the on the computer or the cloud, whatever it is you use. It's kind of teaching them all of those lessons, right? Because as soon as those kids download that footage, the first thing they're going to do straight from downloads is drop it in Premiere, right? And people that are videographers on the call, know that that's like the worst thing you could do, right? Because as soon as you start organizing those those assets after the fact, it's just going to unlink, and then you're going to get endless questions. Mr. Lawyer, how the hell do all my stuff's gone? You'll get this all the time. Oh, my project got deleted. And I'm like, it's not got deleted. You just didn't organize yourself, right? So this whole basic thing, I literally just give them an assignment. It's just to do with favorite foods, right? And I give them all of the requirements right here. Requirements include at least 6 different shots of foods cut together. I give them a minimum amount of shots that they have to do. Total length of your video must be between 30 and 35 seconds. I typically always give them a minimum shot, shot amount that they need to do. So you need to include at least 6 shots or 8 shots. And I give them a specific time they need to fall between. And I'm very strict about that too, right? So if it has to be between 30 and 35 seconds, I tell them, I says, if your project's 29 seconds and 29 frames, I'm taking points off, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. I says, do you know what? That's part of the challenge, right? You have to understand the time code and where exactly that meets, the end of that video meets, how long is that file? Because it's important when they leave high school and they get a client, who's paying money, and they say, look, I have a 60-second spot and I'm paying for it. You can't be 61 seconds, right? That's a problem. So, I'm very kind of specific about that type of thing. And I encourage them to have different shots as well, as in a minimum amount of shots, because you'll get this as well, where a kid will get 2 shots and then they'll be like, I edited it, I'm done. But it's not really enough. They're not really getting enough practice. So I give them a video of their favorite foods. I get them to include a music track as well. I'll kind of get into a method of doing that in a second. There's a bunch of different ways you can get music. I would say, I'll get into that in a second. Anyway, the first thing I probably wanted to mention as well is that there's a couple of stock video websites that are really, really useful to use. And if you guys wanted to take some notes on this, you're welcome to. But when it comes to stock video websites, one website that I always like to use is called Pexels.com. Pexels is really great. It's Pexels. Pexels is so useful because, it doesn't require you to sign in. It doesn't require you to do anything like that. You literally just type in a word, you pick something, you hit that download button. You don't even necessarily need to watch the video to download it. You don't even need to click on the thumbnail. So I'll show you an example. If we're doing favorite foods, if you type in pizza, it's going to show up with a bunch of pizza stuff. It starts with pizza photos. But if you go to videos right here, I've got endless amounts of pizza videos that I can use at my disposal, right? You got ones in portrait orientation, you got landscape, of course, you got both. I always tell them to stick to landscape. Okay. Portrait. Now, I always tell them, I'm like, look, I'm aware that Instagram Reels exists. I'm aware that TikTok's a thing now, right? But nobody's buying vertical TVs, right? So we need to be learning how to edit, how to produce video in landscape orientation first, right? It's kind of the whole thing with filmmaking where it's like, everyone breaks the rules, but you need to learn the rules and how they work before you can break them, right? So I kind of follow that sort of mantra. Anyway, so as you find a video and you want to download it, all you really need to do is just hover over it, it plays, and then you have a download button right here. You click it and it downloads to your computer. So it's really, really easy to use. Pexels.com, P-E-X-E-L-S. It's a really, really, really useful website for me. Another really good one that you might use is VidEvo as well. VidEvo is a really, really good one. Okay, free stock footage is another really great website for downloading stock. Okay, VidEvo. Now, of course, you'll get questions about copyright claims and things like that. The way that I look at it is, you know, educational purposes, if we're using things for education, nobody's making money from it, right? We're not making money from this. Kids are just learning their craft. So they can download videos as they please, and music as well. It's really the minute, you know, you put it on YouTube and you try to monetize it, that's when it becomes a problem. So I really encourage them to be creative and download whatever kind of content they want. So really just build their edit, and because creativity is such a huge thing. It's amazing how many students come into my class and they go, I just don't really know how to be creative, right? And that's what's so good about doing this craft, is that it really allows us to flex our creative muscles. So anyway, a couple really useful websites to use when it comes to just downloading stock. When it comes to music, now music is kind of a contentious subject, right? Because at least our school district blocks every single kind of YouTube conversion website. When it comes to downloading music, we need MP3 files, right? Or WAV files, we need audio production files to use in our edits. Now, of course, if we go to youtube.com, we can't just really easily just grab an audio file. So we need to use a YouTube converter. School districts are so good at blocking YouTube converters, but for a video production program, it's kind of an essential thing that we need. YouTube, everything's all about YouTube these days. Everything is on YouTube. We have so many assets to use at our disposal for educational purposes on YouTube. So I try and use it as much as I can. But there's a couple of really great websites for YouTube conversion that you can use. Capwing Video Converter is really good, literally Capwing with a K. If you type that in Video Converter into Google, the first link is really excellent for converting YouTube videos. But if you don't want to do the YouTube conversion route, and that's totally fine, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is if you actually go to youtube.com, there is a function on YouTube where you can download songs at your will. The only thing is it just requires you to sign in. Now, it doesn't actually matter what account your student signs into. It really doesn't matter at all. They can make a whole new Google account just for downloading music if they want. But a really useful resource for downloading music if you don't want to convert YouTube videos is if you click the actual profile icon after you've signed in, you go down to YouTube Studio. This will show you all of your YouTube content that you're posting or you want to post. On here, if you actually go down on the left-hand side down here, you can scroll down and go to Audio Library. And under Audio Library, this is actually a huge library of music that you can just download at the click of a button. On the right-hand side, you'll see where it says download, and you can just play whatever song you want. Now, the downside to this is the kids can't pick whatever song they want. They can't just type it in and it shows up. You're really limited to whatever YouTube gives you, but there's like 1,000, I can't even see the bottom of my screen right now, but there's 1,368 songs to use, right? So there's an amazing, super useful resource, and it's all copyright free, it's royalty free. So it's completely good, regardless of whatever your school district's rules are. Just hit that download button and now you have assets to use, music to use, right? Because that's always such a big thing, is just grabbing music to use creatively in your videos. Okay, so just to move on a little bit, I'm kind of digressing a touch. Going back to Canvas and my modules and everything. So I've got Premiere Pro Basics. I always start with favorite foods, and I'm pretty much jumping into Premiere by the first week, honestly. Some teachers that I've noticed like to teach some film theory. Film theory is cool and everything, but in my personal opinion, film theory should come probably after high school. It's kind of a controversial thing to say, but film theory is obviously super, super, super important. But at a high school level, when they're teenagers, they just need to get experience making a video. They just need to put stuff together, just need to understand those concepts. They need to understand what entails with video editing, and especially when it comes to Certiport and getting certified, that's what's really important, right? We don't want to be focusing on film theory and we're just watching movies all day and trying to analyze story beats, because I can go on and on about story beats, what a catalyst is, midpoint, all that kind of stuff. I've done all that, right? But to be honest, when you really get into the meat and potatoes of telling a story on film, we really just need to know how to make a video first. So when it comes to editing, I really try and jump in the first week, first 2 weeks at the absolute latest. Because also when it comes to certification, they need as much practice as they can possibly get. So anyway, I start with Premiere Pro Basics. After that, I really get into working with audio. Okay. And when it comes to working with audio, I'm talking about getting audio tracks in it and using keyframes, right? Adding keyframes, along your audio tracks and moving those keyframes up and down and showing them ways that they can increase and decrease their audio smoothly, right? And I actually do the keyframe assignment by using a clip from Gordon Ramsay. So this assignment that I like to do, what it is, I took a Gordon Ramsay clip and I cut out specific sort of strategic parts, and then I give them a music track and I say, okay, so what you're gonna have to do is you have to go through the Gordon Ramsay track, and whenever he's not speaking, you keyframe the music so it comes up, and then when he is speaking, we keyframe the music so it goes down, and so on and so forth. It's kind of a basic, pretty easy assignment, but it really teaches the kids, like, there are much smoother, more professional ways of making our volumes go up and down, which is such a crucial part of video production. I typically use our OneDrive. I don't know if you guys have OneDrive. We use OneDrive at our school district. It's a super good resource. When it comes to organizing your resources, I always get the kids to save everything in OneDrive, just because, as soon as they leave it on that, downloads, it can go anywhere, right? You have unlinked footage. And now that's costing you time as a teacher, just to fix all those problems. So we want to make it as foolproof as possible right from the beginning. So I tell them, look, save everything in the cloud. So if you go home or you change computers or we have a seating plan because you're all bad kids, you've still got all your stuff that you can edit with. None of your footage is unlinked. I don't have to have those headaches, right? Anyway, so this is a fun little assignment that I get, that I give to them just to kind of teach them about audio production and waveforms. We go into waveforms a little bit, what exactly that means. After that, we get into screenwriting. Now, screenwriting is, everybody has to get into screenwriting. Writing scripts, so important. Learning how to write a script, formatting a script is such a huge thing, right? There's a lot of different screenwriting software that's available. Traditionally, I've always used a software called Celtx. If you're not aware of Celtx, it's very famous videographers around the world. But Celtx, CELTX, is an amazing script writing resource. If you've never used Celtx, I'd give it a go. The free version, though, it's one of those things where, like, as it is kind of with everything, it's everything. Everybody wants you to pay for stuff, right? There's not really any free resources anymore. Celtx is kind of partially free. You can do one project at a time. You do one script at a time in Celtx. But honestly, after you download that PDF onto your computer, you can essentially just delete the script and do another one when you get into other assignments. So it still remains free. But the beauty about Celtx is that it really allows you to do all the formatting just at a drop of a hat using a little drop-down menu. It does all your formatting for you, as well as your font and all those really super important things when it comes to script writing. It kind of does all those things for you, right? So use Celtx. It's a really excellent resource to use. So yeah, that's big advice that I give with that when it comes to screenwriting. The assignment that I give for screenwriting after kind of doing a lesson with screenwriting, what I typically do actually is I do a script in front of the class and I kind of get them to put in their input. So if I say, Mr. Lowe's at the front of the class, teaching a room of bored students, what is, and I call out a kid, I says, Johnny All, he comes up with a line, he screams at the teacher, and then I get Johnny All to tell me the line, and I kind of write it in front of them. And it kind of makes sort of a funny little exercise for us all, but it sort of introduces everybody to the idea of script writing, and I kind of demonstrate at the front. After that, I give them an assignment. It's called write a 3-page script. All they have to do is a 3-page script, and it can be about whatever they want. And notice how in Canvas, the way that I've got my assignments organized in Canvas, I give them an objective at the beginning, of course, with the standards and everything to keep admin happy. Target, I can write a script that's effectively presented with all elements properly formatted to industry standards, blah, blah, blah. Deliverables, we're telling them exactly what they need to deliver, right? How long roughly it takes, the date it needs to be due, the goal score, the directions, right? You need to have a main character. You need to have a goal for the main character. You need to have a conflict for them to solve. You need a solution. So we're just kind of laying out really basic things when it comes to writing a script, but it's important to do that because otherwise the kids will just stick anything on there and they've not really learned much about what it is to put a very basic A to B story together, right? You need to have dialogue between two characters, very, very important. You put that stipulation in there as well as a secondary character, because otherwise they could just put everything in actions and they never have to actually format dialogue, which is so important writing scripts. So make sure when it comes to in your deliverables, putting all those really specific points in there. So it's really, they have no excuses then, right? That's really the most important thing. How to turn in things, I give them a little video on how to turn it in. I literally just did this over Loom. Okay, Loom's a really cool resource where it actually records your face as well as the screen at the same time, which is really cool. It does have limited features on the free version, but you can do some pretty basic stuff on Loom, like teach a really basic lesson and post a video on Canvas so kids can kind of reference it at any point. So this is also a really good resource called Loom. I kind of use this periodically, kind of depends on what it is and kind of my mood on the day. But yeah, resources, I give them the actual link to the website. So there's no excuses. A kid can't come back and say, hey, I didn't know what to use. I'll be like, well, it's in Canvas. Just go into resources right there, right? There's no excuses. We give them a couple of examples, of course. We wrote a little Star Wars short last year, just a fake thing, whatever you guys want to do. If you guys want to write a script about literally whatever, and you just kind of format it properly, and obviously spelling, grammar, punctuation is so important and all that kind of stuff. We have scene headings, all those things. Give them a really nice foolproof example, parentheticals and all that stuff. And you just kind of list it in Canvas right there as a PDF. And then a rubric right down at the bottom, right? Get that rubric on there. It doesn't have to be crazy. used to put way too much time into my rubrics, really kind of breaking down all the criteria and everything. But really, if you just have 5 different bits of criteria, grade out of 10, and just kind of list it all on there, it's probably fine. It's enough, right? So yeah, there's what I tend to do with 3-page script. I kind of tell them, you can write whatever script you want. And again, it's kind of another practicing creativity, right? Because I tell them, you can write a story. It doesn't have to be based in school. You could have anteaters in space. I don't know, man, like be creative, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's all about being creative. So yeah, we go into script writing. We go into, after that, we get into effect controls and layering, okay? I give them this really fun project to do with layering as well. I don't know if you guys remember the thing with Shia LaBeouf a few years ago when he got in front of a green screen and he's screaming, just do it on camera. It was like some weird student project thing. Well, what I did is I downloaded that Just Do It project. I give it to the students and I say, hey, look, key out that green, grab some footage from the internet and put it behind Shia LaBeouf. And it really teaches them about layering, right? It's fun because they get to use a green screen, and green screen is like one of those things where the kids are like, "Oh, green screen! I know, I know what a green screen is," and they're just desperate to use it. But really, the lesson isn't so much about green screen. It's really about getting them to understand how layers are done within a timeline in Premiere. That's really what we're teaching them, right? It's not really about the green screen. Green screen's cool and all, and it's useful. But at the end of the day, layering is way more useful, learning how to layer things. So that's really what this is about. But this is always a really fun one to do. What I tend to do with that as well is I can download other footage of other green screen things. So that's why we have this little helicopter here. Is I just showed them at the front. I'm like, look, I've got Shia right here with a ghost in the background. Well, you know what now? I'm going to find another green screen video of a helicopter. I'm going to key out the green in the helicopter. And I'm just going to put the helicopter on there too. And then suddenly it's like, it's a wow moment. They're like, okay, I get it, right? We can layer lots of things in the timeline. And that's kind of how it all works. One thing that I like to tell them as well is that layering within Premiere is kind of like the program monitor is like a top-down view of the cake. It's like having a cake. The program monitor is a top-down view of the cake, whereas the timeline is like a side view of the cake where you can see all the different layers. And whatever layer is on top, that's the thing that we're going to see first, right? It's going over layering, it's going over effect controls. And as we all know, effect controls within Premiere is such an important function, right? So that's a really fun assignment that I like to do. They always like to do that, and just to kind of go over 1 or 2 others, shot types of filming in class, what we're doing right now, where, I get them to go over shot types, close up, long shot, wide shot, or whatever it is, X, Y, and Z. We go over all that stuff. And what I've done this year in particular is I've got them to do an advertising project. So what I did this year is I got a big bag and I put some random objects in the big bag, and in groups, I get one kid to come up, put the hand in the bag and grab a random object. So like tape dispenser, stapler, friggin' pencil, whatever it is, a mouse. They have to make an advertisement on it. And it really teaches them about shot types. What exactly is a long shot? What's a close up? you know, what's a mid shot, what's a medium close up, you know, cowboy shot, all these things, right? And once again, you know, I get them to have at least a few shots, 6 shots. I don't make it too long, 15 to 30 seconds for this one. You must have a close-up of the object you're advertising, and you must include a title at some point in the video. That's another big one, is getting them to use titles frequently. Titles are really tough to kind of learn in Premiere. They're a little tricky to use these days. They got rid of the legacy title function in Premiere recently, which I used to really like legacy title. Now I have to kind of do it the new way. I find them a little finicky, and they do too. So it's important to really get them to use titles frequently, because it really takes a lot of practice to get through titles. And I give them under resources a nice example for them to use. I give them all the stock photo websites, stock video websites that they need. So there's no excuses. Again, rubric, all that kind of stuff. And the list goes on, right? I don't want to keep going on and on about Canvas, but I go over shot types. We go over a couple of rules, some basic rules. That's actually this week. We've just finished up the advertising project. So it's kind of taken all quarter just to get through those modules that I've already gone over. We're about to get into composition next. What exactly is composition, right? Rule of thirds, leading lines, achieving depth in your images, all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into that. The assignment that I'm going to give them for that one is, it's kind of a cliche, right? All the video production programs do this. It's such a cliche, but I'm going to get them to do the silent movie thing, right? I'm going to do a silent movie. So they don't have to worry about audio and stuff. Put some funny effects on there and some goofy music, and, because that's what's going to really get them to focus on composition, right? What exactly is getting through that frame, rather than having to focus on effects and graphics and sound and all that stuff. They're just focusing on the image itself. So yeah, anyway, and so on and so forth. And the list goes on, right? But investing all this time to Canvas. Now, this took a long time, right? As I'm sure you guys think the same thing if you haven't done this already. It's taken a long ass time to actually write all these pages and, come up with all these systems. But it's a time investment. You're investing in yourself, right? You're investing in your own time in the future. Because later on, it's like this year, I had all this stuff pretty much written out, for at least for the most part, when I started this year. And I just kind of picked and choose. I was like, great, let's do that this week. It made it really, really, really easy for me. So it's definitely worth it. One thing I wanted to kind of touch on as well is pre-production and grading, right? When it comes to doing some of these assignments, particularly video projects, things like, this Just Do It, or really, I guess you could say the advertising project more than anything, right? Whenever you have a project where you get them to film and edit, I always get students to do pre-production and post-production individually, right? And what I mean by that is, like, pre-production and post-production is like paperwork and editing, right? What will happen all the time, and if you're a newer teacher in particular, you'll find this. If you're a more seasoned teacher, I'm sure you're getting this all the time, is that students, as soon as you say, okay, it's in a group, which video production is typically in a group, right? Production is a group thing. It has to be a group thing, right? All the time, kids will go, oh, okay, Mike's editing it, so I'm good. We don't want that, right? As teachers, we don't want kids to be sitting around playing around the phone and have that one kid in the group do all the editing. It's totally backwards, right? And as soon as administrator walks in doing an informal evaluation or something like that, it's a problem, right? Because they're going to see a bunch of kids just sitting around playing on the phones, and the admin's going to go up to them like, hey, what are you doing? And they're going to go, oh, my teammate, he's doing all the editing, so I'm cool. We don't want that, right? So pre-production, post-production, I always get them to do it individually. Production, when they're actually making the video, I get them to do it as a group, just because you kind of have to do that, right? But and this is what the other thing I tell them is, like, look, I understand that it doesn't really make much sense from a production standpoint, right? From a production standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to do the same thing over and over and over again between 4 different people, but it's a school first, right? I have to give them grades, and we have to prove that they understand these concepts. So I always get them to do pre-production and post-production separately. Write your script on your own, you hand in your script. If it's a little different from your group members, whatever, pick the best one when you do production. That's fine. When it comes to editing, edit your own footage. Whether you have to share that on the cloud or whether you're doing it on SD cards and you just plug it into different computers and you all do the footage. If the edits look pretty similar to each other, who cares, right? They're all editing, they're all learning these skills. And when it comes to Certiport, right, of course, and certifications, that's so important. Okay, excellent. So, I've gone over assignments, we've gone over a little bit of grading. We talked a little bit about pre-production. When it comes to levels and tiers, right? So we have level 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mentioned level one is really obviously just the nuts and bolts of it, right? How to edit, how to organize your footage, how to do all that stuff. Level two, three, and four is when it starts to get a little bit tricky, right? Because the kids have already been with you for a year. They just want to make stuff, right? And that's typically what I tend to do with my level twos and everything. I tend to not give them these little baby assignments. I just give them big projects to do. And I've also introduced something called crew points this year as well, which I'll get into a second. But for level two, for example, right, I just get them to so what I did this year in particular was I got them to create a news package. In this case, a news package would be like, but the first one that I gave them at least this quarter was to interview a teacher, right? Interview a teacher, get some B-roll of the classroom. That's been a really great sort of first assignment for them. Second years when they kind of graduate to that next level, because when you interview a teacher, it kind of forces them to get out on the field. It forces them to communicate with people. It forces them to kind of learn those lessons, learn some important interview lessons too. It kind of gives you an excuse to go over best practices when it comes to interviewing, how to frame an interview, right? How to have the subject look in a particular direction, whether you're looking at the person or whether you're looking at the camera. Open-ended questions, right? Yes or no answers. Yes or no answers are bad, right? We want open-ended questions. And it kind of teaches them that sort of process as well, which at least for the state of Florida is in their standards, at least for the state of Florida, is that they need to learn interview things, right? They need to learn, I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but they have to conduct an interview. So it sort of teaches them all those things. And not only that, but it, gives them much needed practice and things that they might not remember from last year. I get them to do things like unit reviews. Okay, if you do a particularly tricky module where they learn a lot of new things, just get them to write a couple of paragraphs, and it really gives you a chance. Gives you a breather for the day, of course, but it also gives you an opportunity to see who's really struggling and who's not. After that, I've got them to do a video series this year. So video series meaning like they have to do episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 throughout the year. Quarter one is episode 1, quarter 2, episode 2, and so on and so forth. And I got them to do that because it gives them. It kind of forces them to think about continuity, right? Because continuity is also super, super important video production concept, right? If somebody's looking a certain way or doing a certain thing, it needs to be consistent on the next shot, right? That's why you have things like script supervisors and things like that on set, specifically for that reason. It's so easy to screw up continuity. So it really teaches them sort of that concept that things need to be consistent throughout. And I also use that opportunity to have them write a treatment as well. A treatment is just another pre-production thing, of course. Treatments obviously traditionally when it comes to movies is you just write a treatment. It's just a summary of that movie. I got them to do it for the whole video series. It's not exactly traditionally how it's done, but for each, I get them to write 4 paragraphs sort of towards the beginning of the year and say, look, for each paragraph, that's you laying out your plan for each episode throughout the year. And then as we get to that point, they can start getting into the specifics and start writing scripts and things like that. When you get to that, cross that bridge when you get to it, right? So that's a couple of the assignments that I've done. I'm going to get them to write PSAs next, public service announcements. Don't run in the hallway. Don't leave trash around the room. Do your work on time, blah, 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 right? But come up with some really creative ideas as to how to kind of convey those messages. And it's really just focused on making content. When it comes to doing pre-production as well, I typically get my students, when it comes to these project-based assignments, I get them to write a script and a shot list. That's it for me, typically. This one assignment, I got them to do a treatment, but don't get them to do a treatment every time. It's really just for that one thing. For every project, though, I get them to do a script and a shot list, right? The reasons why, right? They're very easily gradable, right? They're easy grades, they're easy points. It's also really important practice for them, obviously, in the career. Like, we have to plan out our dialogue, actions, all that stuff. Scripts are so important. We all know that. But shot list is really important too, because it gives them a plan when they go out and shoot. They're not just showing up and just, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to record whatever. It forces them to think about it beforehand. Myself, when it comes to shot lists, the way that I kind of lay it out, I just, I give them a template, of course, for them to use. In my case, it's just a blank template like this. I get them to put the date, the production title, whoever's in your group, scene number, shot type. So like mid shot, close up, wide shot, blah, blah, blah. And a description of that shot. So it's a pretty easy document. They still screw it up all the time, right? But it's cool, right? It's all practice. That's all part of it, right? But I get them to do a shot list. I get them to do a script pretty much every single time I get them to do a new project, because those are essential planning documents that have to do in the industry. One thing that I used to do, and what I know a lot of people still do these days, is get students to do storyboards. Storyboards are fun, right? And if you don't know what a storyboard is, it's of course when you have the boxes and you draw out what your shot's going to look like in the boxes. That's cool and everything, but the kids, they really struggle conceptually to understand what a storyboard is. They always end up doing stick figure in a house, and it's just stick figure walks to house, and the next frame is stick figure goes up to door and opens the door. But they just all draw them all the same way, and I just never find them that useful. And not only that, but you have to photocopy a bunch of things, and you have to go through. They're also quite difficult to grade, right? Because if the kid's not particularly good at drawing, it's kind of hard to make out what they're doing. How the hell are you going to grade that, right? It's really tough to grade. So I don't really get them to do storyboards. And honestly, I've not missed it. The students haven't really missed it. I think it's been a positive change for me just to scrap that whole concept altogether. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. So level 2, I just get them to make content, right? I come up with just different video things to do throughout the year, just kind of give them different sort of tests. Level 3 is kind of similar. I give them a lot of different projects, but with level 3, I'm kind of shifting the focus more on doing social media, like really understanding like how to put together social media content, different aspect ratios, coming up with descriptions, thumbnails, all that stuff. Some of it's not so much video centric, but these are different skills that we need as videographers, right? We need to be able to write a really, compelling description. We need to be able to make a thumbnail, right? It's all about those really important, essential skills, especially for young people, right? Us old fogies might not, do much with social media, right? But these kids are on social media all the time. They need to know these skills. There's going to be companies over the next 10 years, more and more and more, it's just going to keep building and building, that are going to keep hiring people just for social media content. So I try to get my third years just to kind of be more into that kind of business side of things when it comes to social media and making different types of content. My level 4s, I'm focusing more on live content with them. I'm blessed with my video production studio at my high school to have an amazing studio situation. Now, obviously, people in different scenarios might not have those luxuries, right? Depending on your budget, depending on your facilities. But you can always kind of alter those lessons, right? You can get them just to record things, say on a pop-up green screen, and make a newscast, right? You can kind of simulate in the news. One thing I'm getting my kids to do as well, actually, pretty much this week, actually, we're starting it, is doing live morning announcements. It's another thing we can do. Let's say you don't have the ability to actually record and speak live on air, but you have the ability just to put pre-recorded content on air. You can get your level 4s to come up with all that pre-recorded content, organize it all, as well as figuring out the teleprompter. If you have a teleprompter available to you, I get them to do teleprompter stuff. I get them to write all their own scripts with the teleprompter. So again, it's kind of like a different skill set that's more to do with communication and organization and really being able to work as a team. Just with a totally different skill set. And I kind of focus on kind of like the more live stuff when it comes to the 4th years. Just because, well, for starters, it's in, again, Florida state standards for us. They want us to do live productions with level 4s. But of course, it's, again, giving them a different skill set, right? So yeah, that's kind of like roughly how I split up the tiers without getting into too much detail, because I'm kind of waffling on. But yeah, that's roughly kind of like how I organize my tiers. After I kind of go over all these like little concepts and, especially my level 1s over time, I'm going to be getting into certification testing, right? Just to kind of round that off. I always go in with Gmetrics, right? We all know Gmetrics, or at least you hopefully should know about Gmetrics. Gmetrics is such a great resource to use. It really does replicate Certiport pretty well now. Years ago, things have evolved, right? Years ago, even sort of 5-6 years ago, it wasn't nearly as seamless and kind of streamlined as it is now, but Gmetrics actually does a pretty decent job, right? So get them to dive into Gmetrics. I'm just getting them to do Gmetrics right now in the 2nd quarter. My first quarter was really just getting our feet wet with editing and all that kind of stuff, especially my level 1s, because that's the majority of my students, level 1s. Getting the feet wet, getting editing, just making content, right? Making projects, really learning all those systems. And then we start getting into Gmetrics. Now, the way that I typically do it now, in a minute, I kind of want to open the floor and get other people's opinions. But when it comes to certification testing, I try not to have too many Gmetrics days, right? Certification days throughout the week. I tend to either do Monday every week or Monday and Tuesday every week. that's kind of historically how I've done it. That's how I'm going to start doing it next week. We're literally at the end of our quarter tomorrow. So next week I'm going to be getting into doing certification tests, geometrics, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm probably only going to do like Mondays, every Monday geometrics, because the kids, they start to get burned out. You know, they start to get burned out really quick, and we really don't want that for them. We don't want to get them burned out on testing, you know, before we're even close to testing. So try to do it one day a week. I feel like that really helps them. It's really easy with geometrics to pick up where you left off from last week. And the rest of the week, keep doing projects, because the thing is, when you're doing projects, they're learning anyway, right? It's geometrics, but it's practical. They're doing their own thing. And if they're filming each other doing fun projects, that's the best way that they can learn, because they're going to their friends and their friends are doing stupid stuff or acting terribly, or, you know, they're terrible acting or looking the wrong way, or it's forcing them to work as a team and be a group and actually have fun while they're doing it. So, and as we all know, right, if you're having fun while you're learning, that's numero uno scenario, right? So yeah, and then of course over time I'm going to get them to, you know, do Certiport and do the actual certification test. I'm hoping this year I'm going to be at least get my first round of testing done. I'm hoping by the end of November this year. That's what I'm hoping. Historically, I haven't even touched it until like February, but this year I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to get that first attempt in, and who knows, man? If I get a few passes, I'll be thrilled with some of these freshmen. So yeah, of course, with at least in the state of Florida, I'm not sure what it's like everywhere. It might be the same everywhere, but they make us do the bundles now. So it's not just Premiere for us anyway. We need either Premiere and After Effects or Premiere and Photoshop. To pass 2 tests, passing 1 test is already hard enough. To pass 2 tests, super tough. So you know, we want to get in there early. All right, you know, I got a bunch of things I can show you. You know, I wanted to show you guys a little bit about this. You know, I'm waffling on. I'm kind of going over time. I don't want to take too much of everybody's time. But for my first years, I'm looking into getting a bunch of these handycams. I actually don't have any handycams in my current program. My old program, I taught at a different school before years ago. My old program, I had a bunch of these handycams that was so useful for us for the first years, because they have just a little video camera. Right now, without handycams, I'm having them do it on their phone. Phones are really great and useful and everything. They're super good quality nowadays. They've all got them, so it's their responsibility, which is awesome. But the problem is getting the footage from the phone onto Premiere, right? It's a pain to do that process. Not in terms of Adobe. It's not really Adobe's fault. It's just, you know, the whole, on iPhones, it's uploading to the cloud and, you know, downloading it from the cloud. That's the hardest part about using phones. They're really convenient, but inconvenient in that sense. If we can get a hold of handycams, which is I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do this year with the budget I'm going to get from my certification testing last year and what my kids passed, I'm going to get a bunch of handycams to use for my program because it's really useful. My upper level kids, I get them to use professional grade camcorders like Panasonic's. I think we currently have Panasonic DVX200s. They're super good cameras. But any kind of video cameras like this, I get my upper level kids to use because I trust them more. I know who they are at this point. I know they're not going to go run off with it. I know these kids. You know, and you know, this expensive stuff, right? And we don't have much of it, and we don't have a huge budget. We don't have unlimited funds, so we need to be really careful about our equipment. Anyway, I was going to show you all that, but you know, ran out of time. This, that, and the other. What I wanted to do, I wanted to kind of open the floor because I wanted to hear from some of the other people on the call. I know we only have, looks like Greg, Betsy, Karen, and of course, Tana. But I kind of wanted to open the floor a little bit. I wanted to know, do you guys have any tips? A little bit about you guys, you know, if I might be missing something because I've been doing this for years, but I'm always trying to learn new tips and tricks. Do you guys have anything to add? Anything that I might be missing? Any thoughts?
Greg, if I can get us started, I wanted to ask, or sorry, Brad, if I can get us started, I wanted to ask where you have to either do After Effects or Photoshop as well. Which one do you choose, and do you try to fit it into that same first year? How does it work for you?
Super good question. Do you know, I'm not actually sure yet. It's one of those things where, like, I personally have I have a longer amount of experience with Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop since I was a kid, right? So After Effects, I'm not nearly quite as experienced with After Effects.
Right.
I am pretty good with After Effects. I've been using it for a few years. But really, the main thing with After Effects is that I don't know if it's going to run on our computers that I've got right now.
Right.
After Effects is a little bit more of a processor-heavy software. So if you don't really have the infrastructure, the facilities to run After Effects, then you kind of limited. You sort of have to do Photoshop. Ultimately, I want to do After Effects because After Effects, as a videographer, in my experience, I'm sure that people will agree, After Effects is just more useful than Photoshop for a video production professional, right?
Absolutely.
It's just more useful. Photoshop is useful, you know, understanding PNGs and transparency and all that stuff is great and everything, but you know, you might use Illustrator for that. Like, Photoshop is cool and everything, but it's not as useful as After Effects. But I guess we'll see. I'm going to try and run After Effects. I'm going to do a basic project and see how it goes. But if I can run After Effects and it's okay, I'm going to do After Effects.
All right, good to know. Greg, can you come off mute? Did you have a question? I just don't know if we've allowed that. Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. First of all, Bradley, I just want to say this. I'm only in my second year of teaching, and this has been like the best resource I have found in the year that I've been looking for. I mean, it was like absolutely perfect. Matches up with everything I have. I have Canvas. I have OneDrive.
Amazing.
So
that's great. I'm so thankful. I really appreciate you saying that. That's
yeah. No,
I have no idea.
I was taking screenshots of your assignments as we were going and stuff, but
oh, cool. Okay.
You know, it was absolutely fantastic. I'm teaching at a career technical center, so it's 11th and 12th graders. I have them each for like half a day, so half a day for 11th, half a day for 12th, and I'm teaching digital media arts, which includes photography, Photoshop, graphic design, and video and animation and everything. So I'm trying to, figure out how to hit all that stuff.
Man, I don't know how you're doing that.
Yeah, it's and then the topic of Adobe certifications has just come up again. Like, so right now the previous instructor had not done any. There is another teacher next to me that teaches web and graphic design. So we kind of cross over a little bit. And she said she's really kind of just saved the certifications for her top students that she knows can pass it.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at like my class this year, half of the class is on IEPs or 504 plans.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, how do I teach? I've got kids who've come in with a bunch of video editing knowledge and they're bored and they're done in 10 minutes. And I got other kids who are still trying to figure out, just getting logged in. So I was looking into Brain Buffet training, and possibly I just got a quote on that this week, possibly using that. But I wasn't sure exactly what Gmetrics does and what that is. That the practice test? Is that what that is? Or?
Yes. So Gmetrics, Gmetrics is it's a practice training thing. It kind of replicates Certiport. So before they take the real test, they can do essentially unlimited Gmetrics tests. I guess it depends on the school district, though. I mean, Tana, you'd be able to. I guess you'd know a little bit more about this than I do. Is Gmetrics? I think is it directly linked to Certiport now, or is there like a deal somewhere? I feel like
what we call our practice test now Cert Prep, and they're powered by Gmetrics. They're definitely our content. It's just delivered on Gmetrics platform, and exactly like you're saying, Brad. Anyone who purchases a certification license through us already has access to Gmetrics. So depending on how you're doing things, I know, Brad, where you're in Florida, you're kind of using the user license model. It's a little bit different. Where are you located, Greg?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay, yeah. So in Ohio, like if you are going to your district and saying, awesome, we want to try certification, let's get a license, let's have all the kids try it, right? Included in that certification license to be able to deliver our exams will be a license for practice tests. So it is good for some amount of learning. It's more useful as kind of a pre-test to see, hey, do you already know this? And then as a post-test of, all right, are you ready for the exam, right? So in typical use cases, a classroom might use a practice test a few times. There's a learning mode where you're going through and it's going to tell you, hey, you were close, but you missed it. Here's the right way to do it. Or there's an actual training mode or practice mode where you are taking it and it's 50 minutes, the same time as you have on the exam. It's a similar format. They're presenting the questions in a similar way, and you get your score right then to know how'd you do, right? So it's great if you're prepping for certification as just another step along the way. It really does a lot to reduce student anxiety. If you, Greg, are just getting things up and rolling and don't know if you're ready to do certification yet, Gmetrics isn't going to be a good solution for you. Brain Buffet is awesome. LearnKey's awesome. Brad, do you use any kind of flip the classroom video-based learning curriculum, or is it all based on your assignments?
When you say flip to classroom, what do you mean by that exactly? Sorry.
Like giving the students, hey, go watch this video at home and then come here and we're going to dig in and learn on what you learned. A lot of the teachers do that. Yeah. I
don't. I just do assignments. I just do assignments and I just kind of go over the concepts with them. So like, absolutely. If I start with a new module in a particular concept, I try to like split my modules up into those concepts, right? Like working with audio or whatever, right? Sure. And I kind of do the demonstration in the front first, and then I say, okay, look, this is what I want you to do. I give them all the resources, and then say, okay, you do it now. And that's just generally how I do it. I find that's the best way for me. some people find, I feel like older kids, and that's kind of, like you were saying, Greg, one of the hardest things with teaching, at least high school in general, really anything, I guess, being a teacher in general, is just having to juggle all those different people, right? Some people are so good at it. Some people are terrible. Some people are not terrible. They're just learning. Some people are really good, but they're just lazy, right? It's just you trying to balance all of those characters and all of those different skill sets. That's so tough to do. And that's one of the hard parts about being a teacher, right? But yeah, I totally sympathize with like you, Greg, with some of these students being like overachievers and then other kids, really taking forever. Like that's a hard thing to kind of navigate.
It really
Yeah,
that's where I was told that Brain Buffet might help, because you could give these modules out and work with kids who need the help, while other kids might be moving on, or they might be on a totally different software that you're not going to cover with the whole class, but they could go and kind of work on that. Is that how it works?
If you've got kids that are working well ahead, something like that is, you've got your base curriculum, and you could take Brad's approach and borrow some of his resources and his style, which is excellent. And then you could also have, okay, awesome, you are ready to go on to After Effects. The rest of the class isn't ready to go there, but Brain Buffet has self-paced, you work on your own, right? And so that definitely could fit that need for you if you've got kids that are just really excelling, or you could take Brad's approach and move the class all along at the same pace and have a few others that jump ahead. Yeah, that's one route to take.
Something that I tend to do with my kind of overachievers sometimes is that, I kind of have an overarching thing with my program is when it comes to announcements. Like I'm working on content for announcements pretty much all the time at the moment anyway. So my real overachiever kids, I try to get them involved with that side of it. So if they've done their project and they're like, I don't know what else to do, I'll kind of find something for them to do. Like if they really want to get into doing it, I've got a couple of kids that are really super into After Effects, they're super into compositing. So I'll be like, hey, look, if you guys are really into compositing, we really need graphics for, the announcements or whatever. And I'll go, do you guys want to make some graphics and After Effects and composite? And they're like, great. I'll give them some extra credit for it. That's normally enough to keep them occupied, and it kind of keeps them learning. And, so I kind of like give them an overarching task that's sort of related to the program in general. And it kind of gives them a sense of importance as well, right? Like they're contributing to the bigger picture of the whole program. So at least that's my approach with it. But that's always a hard problem to solve. That's always a hard problem to solve. I'm just looking at a couple of the comments on here. And just to let you guys know, I if you haven't seen already on the chat, I posted my email address on there from my school district's email address. If you guys were interested in just email me if you had any kind of advice or you needed any of these links that I showed you today that would be useful for you. Feel free to send me an email with any questions, and I'll get back to you, and I'll send you my stuff. Also, it looks like Karen asked a question as well. Any of you Canvas courses shared on the Commons? I haven't actually messed with Commons yet. I haven't played around with Canvas Commons yet. I guess it's like a shared thing where you can share your courses with other teachers. I'm definitely going to look into that. If you want, Karen, just so we can keep in contact, if you could send me an email on bradley.lowe@osceolaschools.net, that would be great. And then I can kind of keep in touch and let you know what I kind of came up with Commons and kind of where to find my course. And I'll be happy to share the content that I've kind of come up with if it kind of helps you guys out, because anytime we have those Canvas things written, it's always going to be a big time saver for us. We can actually focus on teaching and grading and writing lesson plans that we don't want to write. Who likes writing lesson plans, right? I hate lesson plans. So Chris, how are you doing the how are you getting, I'm sorry to say Chris, Greg, how are you getting along with how are you melding these topics together in one classroom when it comes to Photoshop and
I basically my first years cover design elements, because I kind of figure that plays into everything, rule of thirds, all that stuff is going to factor into photography, video,
right,
illustration, anything they do. So I'm covering all that stuff first. And I start them off real simple. It's a one-to-one school with iPads. So I have them just use their iPad cameras, even though it's low quality, right. It's enough to, prove the understanding of the concept. Then they go from that into, we just did Photoshop. We were using the built-in Adobe tutorials on the HelpX Adobe site. So we would, play a couple tutorials, then I'd give them some really similar to how you had it laid out. You just learned how to use Photoshop layers. Now show me, something, right. Go get any photo you want and put it together. We just did Halloween time, so turn yourself into zombies, everybody take pictures of each other
Yeah.
and then turn
That's fun.
so those simple projects. But then we're going to move into understanding DSLR cameras. We've got set of those, and just kind of build everything, just kind of building on each other, and then getting into video, and understanding that video is basically just a bunch of still photos put together, so the composition and all that stuff still factors into it. We cover all the shots, different type of shots, the 180-degree rule, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a tremendously deep subject, really.
And last year we stumbled into Celtex. We used that. They wrote a script. They did a short film.
So you've used Celtex? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. It was really useful. So
good.
So yeah, I was happy to see that I at least stumbled into the right, the same kind of stuff. And so
for sure, man. I was doing this. I started learning this when I was 16 in England, and we were using Celtex back then. It was a truly free software. This is 15 years ago. It was truly free, though. You could do as many as you want, but you know how it is these days. They all want you to pay, right?
Yeah, but, I'm just in my second year teaching, and I came from more of a graphic design multimedia background, a little bit of video, but not tons. So I'm learning right along with them, and I tell them that. So we just kind of make it work, and stumble through it.
Yeah, of course. And like some of those other things that you mentioned, like rule of thirds and 180-degree rule, and like some of those other ones, like all of those types of concepts, I'm kind of covering second quarter for me. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those where like it's hard to kind of gauge like how well they'll absorb things in what order, right? But for me, like talking about what 4K is and 720p and 1080p and what progressive scanning is and bit rates and things like that, that's just a little too much for them at the beginning. So it's like I kind of tend to go over that sort of second quarter, third quarter, like those types of things, and it's hard just to kind of organize yourself like that. It's really hard to do that. But yeah. Anybody else have anything to add? Anyone else, or are we good here?
Yeah, I think that's probably about it. But Brad, thank you so much for your time. It's been